Okay, we're back. So anyway, it's a sad state of affairs I think we find ourselves in. We get violence sort of all over the world, and you can kind of sort of feel that there's like this, it's like the tea kettle about ready to bubble over, you know? And I don't know about you guys, but I think it's time for everybody to have some kind of basic emergency preparedness. You know, have some water stockpiled. I'm not talking about having, you know, a year's worth of food or water or something, but, you know, if some natural disaster happens, or, you know, like the earthquake that happened, you know, where maybe the stores are closed for a couple of days, the power's out, you know, whatever, that you have some way to take care of yourself for a few days, anyway. So if you guys seen some of my other reviews on the Mountain House meals, which, by the way, I like those a lot. The Coleman meals are not bad, but I really, so far, I've been mostly disappointed with them. But you know, get yourself a water jug. You know, there's the Walmart. One of the Walmarts near us has a 7-gallon water tank. It's stackable. You can put them on top of each other. You open up the lid, and it's got a spout, so you can fill it with water, and then you can turn the valve on it and drain it out. Use it as like a water cooler. You know, get a couple of. They were like $8. Get one of them. 7 gallons of water would last you, you know, a couple 3 days if you were careful with the water supply. Get a couple of them. I mean, it's like $8 a piece. Put them on the shelf. Fill them with water. You know, have some pork and beans. You know, canned food. If you don't want to mess with the Mountain House meals, you know, buy like 20 or 30 cans of, you know, pork and beans with, you know, some meat in them. Pork and beans is a good one because it's got some protein, it's got some sugar, it's got some, you know, fiber, and it tastes reasonably good when it's cold. Yeah, you don't really have to eat it to eat pork. You don't have to heat it up for pork and beans to taste okay. So, long shelf life. I would recommend, if you guys are going to do canned foods, get yourself a safety can opener. I got one of these a long time ago. When you cut the can, instead of puncturing the can on the top, it does it on the side. First thing is you can't cut yourself. That's why they call it a safety can opener. You can't cut yourself on the lid or the can after you're done. The most important thing is that the way it cuts it on the side, you can put the lid back on the can, put a strap on it or a rubber band or tape it or something, and it'll kind of seal. It doesn't really seal, but you can put the lid back on the can. Keep bugs out of it or whatever. Also, it keeps the can opener so you don't have the can opener blade getting down into the food and you get food on the blade, and then the blade, you know, if it's an emergency, you may not be able to wash dishes. So how do you clean the blade? And if you don't, then you might get disease or bugs or bacteria or something. So I like the safety can openers a lot because they just have a lot of advantages. But, you know, like I said, you can go on to, I think it's thereadystore.com, and they have like a 72-hour emergency kit if you want to spend, I think it's $200-300, and it's got some Mountain House meals and some Saratoga Farms meals. But check them out. They've got all kinds of interesting stuff. Or just put together some cans of baked beans and some water. Call it a day. But, you know, if the shit would ever hit the fan, quite frankly, if, you know, civilization as we know it comes crashing down, quite frankly, the majority of us aren't going to survive it because, you know, what are you going to do? Unless you've got yourself a bunker that you can truly seal off, and you have 3 or 4 years of food supply, you know, you're going to be left to hunting and fishing. But it's the short-term things, like, you know, the banking system collapses. You can't get any cash out of the bank. Your bank card doesn't work for a week. The electric grid goes down for a week. You know, what are you going to do? One thing to keep in mind is your water heater. Most people have a hot water heater. Let's say a natural disaster happens, power goes out, something happens, you know. First thing you want to do, if you know it's going to be a while till everything is back to normal, turn off the water input to your hot water heater. That way, if there's any kind of contamination in the public water system, the contaminated water does not get into your hot water heater. The reason I say that is, even in an apartment, the water heater is generally 25 gallons. Well, there's 25 gallons of water already in your house. And most of them have a drain at the bottom. It's usually like a water tap. You know, if you need to, there's 25 gallons of water. That'll last a long time. But if you don't close that water tap on the top, and the contaminated water gets in there, now you've ruined it. So, some kind of serious natural disaster happens, especially if they issue a drinking water advisory. Turn off the water to the house, I guess, would be even better, and use that hot water heater as a nice-sized water tank. But other than that, you know, have some flashlights, batteries, knives, firearms, your choice. Now, handguns are great for some things. Rifles would be better for other things. And quite frankly, bow and arrow is probably, in a long-term disaster, bow and arrow is probably your best bet. If you can go retrieve the arrows, you could probably make new arrows if you had to. Might not be as good as the ones you purchased, but they would function. And the biggest thing about a bow and arrow is it's quiet. Let's say you do live out in the country, and you got enough deer, rabbit, squirrel living on your property to sustain you. Well, shooting off guns draws attention to yourself, and you're liable to have the mob from the city, decide you might be a place they could find food. Whereas with a bow and arrow, it's silent. The fact that you can reuse the arrows is a big thing too. I mean, if the world really would come to an end, you can reload ammo, but most people aren't capable of making gunpowder. So at some point, you're going to run out of ammunition. Bow and arrow